Hi and welcome back. It's George and you're not broken. So today's topic is value. And I'm going to get down to why it's so important and how I came to understand that it's important. You see, through my previous videos and through the work I did and the research I did, I kept on asking myself this one question. I kept on asking, why does this matter? Why does this happen? Why does this occur? Why do we end up in a place of feeling like we need to manage our perceptions, manage what other people think of us, manage how we look to the world, manage how we approach the world? Why is it that we find ourselves feeling trapped, find ourselves feeling in prison or in bondage to what other people might think? Why is it that we find ourselves feeling socially awkward? What makes us shy? What makes us hold back? What makes us keep from being able to express ourselves? And why is that a problem? Why is it a problem that we can't express ourselves? Why is it a problem that we manage other people's expectations? We manage other people's perceptions of us? I think it's a problem because you can't truly know yourself. You can't truly act in your own interests. You can't truly make any real decisions if you're locked up, constantly worried what other people might think or what would someone else do in your situation. I think it's important that we value ourselves, not just in relation to other people, but even of ourselves, that we value our time, we value our opinions, we value our lives, I guess. You see, in my last video I talked about the subconscious and why it acts the way it does and how things seem to be in terms of getting into situations of anxiety and these self-reinforcing feedback loops I mentioned. There's other aspects of that. There's other things that I think if you value yourself, you trust yourself for one thing, and so you will make decisions and not hold back. You will not second guess yourself every time you want to make a choice. There's other aspects as well, such as your interactions with other people. If you value yourself, if you know who you are, you won't be socially awkward. You won't constantly judge and think about what other people are thinking of you. And so it lets you be yourself. And there's something wrong with constantly managing other people's perceptions of you. And that is that you come across as not genuine. You come across as fake. You come across as creepy. You come across as a bit weird and eccentric. If you can just get into the moment, if you can just be yourself in the moment, then people know that you're being real. You see, we've all got this really strong intuition on what other people are doing and how they're behaving. And so it comes across really obvious no matter how hard you try. And probably the harder you try, the more fake you'll come across. People know when you're being genuine. People know when there's something else going on. So if you can just be yourself, you'll get acceptance much more easily from people. And it's one of those catch-22 type situations where you'll act in a certain way to be perceived better by someone. But because they're picking up the subconscious adjustments that you're making, they're picking up how you're acting a little bit strange, they pick up your weird vibes, and it will do the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve. So you're trying to make someone like you, you're trying to be accepted, and they'll put a wall up because you're being fake and you're not genuine and there's something weird about you, there's something a little bit off. Coming to realize that is very important, but it's not enough to know it just in your head, just in your conscious mind. it needs to settle. It needs to settle in your heart. It needs to settle in your subconscious. It needs to become a part of you. And so why is value even a thing? Why is value important? I'll go through some things. But I'd like to talk about how value shows up. Before I get there, I'd like to talk about how value expresses itself. If you value yourself, it means that you're going to be self-confident going into situations. It means you're going to not be nervous in a job interview. We see sports teams that choke quite often, where they've played well throughout the season, and when it gets to that final game, all the doubts and all the insecurities come back and haunt them, and they end up completely failing. I think a really good example is one that I saw on the internet of someone who knows their value and how that looks to people around them. I'm a big Tom Cruise fan. Some of my favorite movies are Mission Impossible and Top Gun. And there was some comments that came across, I think it was Reddit, where they were talking about how Tom Cruise, when he was in Queenstown, he met certain people there, and he'd just be so real, and he wouldn't treat them like he was any better than them. He wouldn't treat them like he was special. He wouldn't treat them like they needed to bow down and worship him. He was just himself, and he'd rock up and he'd bring coffees for the production crew and that sort of thing. Like, he doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to prove that he's good enough. He doesn't need to prove that he's better than you. He doesn't need to prove that... He doesn't need your acceptance of him. He doesn't need your liking him. He doesn't need you to agree with him. He's Tom Cruise. And then that same thread was talking about other actors and how some other actors, especially new up-and-coming ones, can act like complete dicks and really put down people and treat the production crew and treat just the lowly paid people around the movie set really badly. But someone who's got a true understanding of their value treats everyone really well. I think that's quite important, and I think if you know your value, it'll improve your interactions with everyone. It'll improve your chances with getting that job. It'll improve your success at dating. It'll improve how you interact with people. People will like to be around you. People will flock to you. People will enjoy your company. But not only that, when it comes time to make decisions at work, or start your own business, or buy a house, or buy a car, you won't keep on second guessing yourself, because you know and you trust yourself to make that decision. You trust yourself to make a good decision. You trust yourself to figure things out. And there's two aspects of that, as you might have seen through that last little bit that I was talking about. Two aspects of value. The one is your value to others and how others might see you. And the other is your self-trust. Nathaniel Branden, in his book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, talks about self-confidence in two aspects. He talks about self-efficacy, which is your competence or your ability to achieve, and your trust in yourself to be able to achieve goals that you set out for yourself. And then he talks about self-esteem or self-respect, and that is how much you value yourself, how much you think others value you. And both of those are critical to your subconscious, and I guess for your subconscious, it doesn't think in terms of value. Your subconscious thinks in terms of survival. Your subconscious thinks in terms of life or death. And those two aspects of your self-esteem or self-confidence act out in ways that affect your ability to survive. And so your subconscious links them together quite closely. Why is that? And the two aspects of that are, one is that your value to the other people means that perhaps they would have been there to protect you if an animal attacked you. So you would have been a priority in getting food. You would have been a priority in protection. You would have been a priority in getting a mate. The other side of it is your self-efficacy, or your ability to achieve. And that's important because for survival, you're dependent on yourself as well. You're dependent on your ability to get food, to kill that animal that attacks you, to protect your family, to make it happen, to build yourself a shelter. And so those two things are critical, and they both play into your subconscious in a very strong way. Your subconscious is very protective over your value. Your subconscious is very protective over how people see you and your identity, because your identity ties up very closely to your fitting into a group, or how you fit into the tribe. Your identity shows, these are the people I associate with that will protect me. These are my family, these are my friends, these are the people that I match with, these are the people that have got my back if something goes wrong. And the other side of it is the mental model. Your mental model is your ability to navigate the world. It's your understanding of how the world works. A very interesting study, and I'll try to find it, showed that if something challenges your identity, or if something challenges your mental model in some way, it doesn't go to your prefrontal cortex or your conscious mind, but it actually triggers that fight or flight response in the amygdala. So if something challenges you, if something threatens you, if something puts down your identity or challenges what you think of how the world works, you can actually feel that life or death significance of the event. I'm not going to get into politics, but I wonder if some of those terms we're seeing that triggered and things like that aren't related to how strongly we are connected to our identities and our tribes. And so I think we must be careful. I think we must manage that. I think we need to be aware that anytime you feel triggered by something that's not life or death, you need to understand why it is that your subconscious thinks of it so strongly, and why you're getting that flood of emotion that says that your life is in danger, that says that your life is being threatened. I wonder if overprotective parenting has anything to do with that. Because if you grow up in an echo chamber of all safe ideas and safe spaces and things like that, you're not used to being challenged, you're not used to things maybe threatening your identity or challenging your beliefs. And I think it's good that we do that. It's good that we are open to ideas. It's good that we are open to things that challenge us. The question around value then is, where do we get our value from? I know that personally I get some value from friendships and relationships, but predominantly I have found my value in my competence. I found my value in my ability to achieve and get things done. There's a problem with that though. The problem is that you can't rely on that, because you may do something well several times, and so it builds up your confidence. But just one knock to that confidence, just one failure in your ability to achieve, and it can erase all the good things that you've done in the past. I'll give an example because I think it rings true. In his book Blink, Malcolm Gladwell talks about thin slicing and how marriage counselors can look at just a small segment of video of interaction between a man and a woman, or husband and wife, or two partners, I suppose. And what they found is that you need 5 good interactions for every bad interaction in order for a marriage to work. If you don't have that magic number, if you don't have 5 to 1, if you go 4 or 3 good interactions to 1 bad interaction, the marriage tends to fall apart. And so I wonder if that links in some way to our self-confidence. I had this 20-year-old Audi that had a lot of electrical issues, and I would fix something and I would feel really good about it. I'd feel on top of the world. I'd feel so confident in myself in that moment. And I would do maybe 2 or 3 jobs in one afternoon. And it was strange how I could fix this major problem. But then perhaps a little plastic clip broke when I was putting it all back together. And I'd go from this real high point, real low, very quickly, just on that one little broken plastic clip. And so if you put all your value into what you can achieve, if you put all your value into your competence, you can't know everything. There are going to be moments of failure. And my trust would take a big knock. My trust in myself would take a big knock. And I'd then go a few days before I could go and try the next thing and fix the next problem. And it's weird how that would play into other areas of my life as well. So I might be feeling on top of the world after fixing the car, and then go into a job interview the next day and do really well. Or if I broke something one day and went into a job interview the next day, I'd be feeling really low the next day. I think that it's vital that we find our value in other places, that we don't rely on how other people talk to us, how good we are at achieving things. Because those two things are tied up. You're never going to have the approval of everyone. You're never going to have everyone like you. It's okay if some people don't like you. And if you place all your value in whether or not people like you, or whether or not you can achieve things, you're always going to find things that knock you back, that put you in your place, that maybe show that you're not as good as you thought you were. So I wanted to look at value in another term. I wanted to put it into monetary terms. The value of the human life in monetary terms can be a little bit morbid, I guess. I saw an article on Google about how much a human being is worth, and they broke it down into monetary terms based on the price of organs on the black market. That's a bit sick, but okay. Another aspect I saw was they looked at the amount of produce or money a person could earn in their lifetime. And you take 7 billion people and you take the averages, work out the average life of a human, and then work out how much that person can earn in their lifetime and say, that's how much a human is worth. I think those two both sell it a bit short though, because your life is the most valuable thing you've got. Your life is the potential for your dreams. It's the potential for all your hopes and desires. It's your future. It's so much more than that. It's all your joy, all your happiness, all your experiences, all your friendships. It's your travel, it's your family, it's pets, it's art, it's music, it's love, it's all these things are all encompassed within our lives. So your life is the most valuable thing you've got. And chances are, if you value it even remotely, it's not something you would give up for some stupid monetary amount. It's not something that you would say, oh, I can put a value on my life. I think I'm worth $10 million or $100 million. Because the second you give it up, you're not able to even spend that money, are you? So I think it's important that we have an understanding of our value. It's important that we put it into terms that make sense to us. So how does value make sense to you? What is a term that we can relate to? Not at a conscious level, but at a subconscious level. In my research on the value of a human life, one article I read talked about how you know the value of someone else only when you lose that person. And so it was talking about how you value a friendship when the friend leaves. You value a family member maybe when they pass on. You value a spouse more when they maybe leave you. And so that's starting to get into terms we can understand. And I don't mean understand consciously, like I said. I mean understand emotionally, understand in our subconscious, where it's actually a part of you, where you actually can feel the value. So if that's the case, that the human life is just worth so much, then there isn't really a way to put it into terms that you can understand. There isn't really a way you can say, oh, I'm worth this much money. No, the only way you can really compare value, the only way you can really get a sense of value, the only real trade in value that you can ever hope would come close to being able to make sense to you, to be relevant in those terms, is if someone were to give up their life for yours. There's many stories here in New Zealand of people who have drowned trying to save relatives and family and kids and sisters and brothers and nephews and nieces, and there's a truly staggering amount of drownings in New Zealand. But I was really encouraged by how many of those stories were stories of people who had put their life at harm's way in order to save the life of someone they loved. I was really encouraged by that idea that people are willing to give up their lives to save the life of someone they love. It's the only true sense of value that makes any sense to me. It was the only true sense of value that I could relate to in a way that, yes, that is a trade worth making. My life for the life of someone I love. And if that isn't the only way to prove your value, I don't know what is. Like, I think that's the only true way you can effectively show someone you value them. Because money doesn't mean anything in the terms of how much your life is worth. As a Christian, then I'm at a little bit of an advantage, I guess, because one of my beliefs is that Jesus died for me. He gave up his life for me. He paid a price for my life. And so I think that's something really good. I think that's something that is an advantage for Christians over other people. It's the one thing that makes Christianity unique, is that someone died for you, and it shows you your value. And even if any of the religious aspects of that are not to be believed, even if you're an atheist and none of the other stuff makes any sense and you don't want to believe that, I think it's worth having the realization that someone has died for you. I think that would give you a new lease on life. It would give you a new sense of your worth. It would give you a new sense of your value. And so living out of a place of knowing your value, not just consciously, but subconsciously, like it actually reaching into your heart and changing who you are and giving you a proof of your value that is undisputable. It is a proof of your value that cannot be taken away from you. It's a proof of your value that just overshines everything else. I think that that sense of value is so important. That sense of your knowing your worth outshines everything else. And without that, we can't really hope to be balanced people. We will always be searching, always be chasing that next high of validation. We'll always be chasing that next relationship or that accomplishment or money or, oh, if only I can get that car, I'll be happy. If only I can get that girlfriend or boyfriend, I'll be happy. If only I can buy that house. If only I can get that job, I'll be happy. If only that person will like me. If only that person will approve of me. If only I can get that many followers. If only I can get that many people to watch my video. And that's something I've had to come to terms with. That's something that I've had to think about. You see, even though I talk about value like this, I still don't know it. I still don't know it in my subconscious. I still don't know it in my heart yet. I think part of that eye-opening moment for me, when I could see how I was chasing value, how I could see I was chasing other people's approval, really helped. But it wasn't complete. I think it's left a part of me that still needs a sign of my value. It showed me how much I was looking for value, but it didn't show me what my value was. And that's something that I'm going to be working on. You know, as a Christian, knowing that Jesus died for us is supposed to change everything. But growing up in a Christian household, I never had that huge salvation experience that I've seen happen for some of my friends and maybe people that were drug dealers. And we see testimonies on TV about people in gangs and that sort of thing that get saved. And it doesn't just go into their conscious mind, but it goes into their subconscious, and it changes their life from one day to the next. And we have people that were maybe drug addicts for years and suddenly are freed from that, or had all this life of crime that they were a part of, and suddenly they don't want any part of that anymore, and their ways are just changed. And I've always been a little bit jealous of people like that, I guess, that they would have that experience that would change their life. And so, for me, the journey's not over. For me, the journey of trying to understand my value isn't over. It's still something I need to work on. It's still something that I need to come to understand at a heart or subconscious level, to know my own value rather than trying to get my value from other things. I'm now conscious, though, that I look for value in other things, and I can choose whether or not I'm going to do that. So there is hope. I think there is hope for everyone, because you don't need a major change of value necessarily. You don't need a major sign of your value necessarily to make changes. But being aware of the things you do to look for value, the things you do for validation, the things you do to gain acceptance of people who maybe don't accept you for a reason, and you don't need their acceptance. But I think there's hope. I think it's good. And if we can just understand it, if we can just become aware of how much we chase value from others or from our achievements, I think that's a start. I think that's a good place to begin in saying that I'm no longer a slave to that. I'm no longer a slave to validation. And if you can reach that point, then you can start making some of your own choices. You're not broken, but there's definitely work to be done. I hope you'll join me in my next video, and if this has helped, if this is beneficial, I hope you'll share it, I hope you'll subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.